See, we can get what we want if we can give you some thoughts or some ideas or some motivation or some stimulation. If we can, in fact, leave you something so that when you go home tonight, you will be a better man or a better woman or a better boy or a better girl, then you will be more successful tomorrow. Yes, there's danger in setting goals, but there's infinitely more danger in not setting them. Then a lot of people do not know really how to set goals. I'd like to share at some length with you on that. And I started writing this book. And I kind of got excited about it. I put in there some words. You can go where you want to go. You can do what you want to do. You can be like you want to be. And man, I wrote those words and I said, now Ziglar, that's pretty good. As a matter of fact, I got to talking to myself, which is perfectly all right. It's all right even to answer. But if you ever catch yourself saying, huh? To the answer, you got a problem. Well, I caught myself with a problem. I was saying, huh? Because where I said you can be like you want to be, I looked down and there was a 41-inch waistline and 202 pounds of Ziglar. And the thought occurred to me that one of these days that I might bump into some of you, and I could just imagine this conversation taking place. I could imagine you saying, Ziglar, you believe that stuff you write? And I was going to say, uh-huh. Then I was going to imagine you saying, do you believe all of it? And I was going to say, man, yeah. Then I could imagine you poking your finger in that 41-inch waistline and saying, Ziglar, do you really believe all of it? And then I was going to have to say, well, you know, us authors, we do take a little literary license every once in a while. But I knew I had to make a decision. I either had to take those words out of there, you can be like you want to be, or I had to do something about me. Not only that, but my boy was 8 years old at the time, and I think every father ought to be able to whip his children until they're at least 12. And the rate I was going, I wasn't even going to be able to catch mine. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when that redhead of mine kept telling me to hold my stomach in, and I already was. So I went down to Cooper's clinic. Now, Cooper is the guy who wrote the book Aerobics. When you see somebody out jogging, you can rest assured that's Kenneth Cooper who had an influence on them. Well, it's a 5.5-hour examination. First thing they did was took 2 quarts of my blood. Well, it looked like 2 quarts. They filled so many vials, I thought they were opening a branch of the blood bank right there. Then they dunked me in a tank of water 3 times. And the purpose was to determine the percentage of body fat that I had. When I got through, they told me that I was 23 9/10% pure lard. Then they put me on a treadmill, and you know, on the treadmill, the longer you can walk, the better your physical condition, and the worst possible condition was horrible. Well, I was determined to get out of horrible into just awful. And I made it by 4 seconds. When it was all over, the young doctor, Dr. Martin, skinny young doctor, runs in the Boston Marathon, does the good things, called me in, big smile on his face, optimistic, a real PMA advocate, probably reads Success Unlimited on top of it. Called me in and with a big old smile, he said, Mr. Ziglar, we've got marvelous news for you. We've run these figures through the computer, and according to our computer, and we know it's right, you, sir, are not overweight. However, he said, according to the computer, you are exactly 5 1/2 inches too short. And I said, well, Doc, that's pretty bad, isn't it? He said, no, actually, you're in remarkably good physical condition for a 66-year-old. And I said, Doc, I'm 46. He said, you're in awful shape. I said, as a matter of fact, if you were a building, I'd condemn you. And I said, well, Doc, what can I do? And he whipped out a sheet of paper thicker than my book, and by the time he got through telling me what I could do, I was kind of like the little boy who asked his daddy a question. And his daddy said, well, son, why don't you just ask your mother? The little boy said, Dad, I just didn't want to know that much about it. I got home, and that redhead of mine said, honey, you're going to be out running all over the neighborhood, I suppose. And I said, yep. Well, she said, if I'm going to have a 46-year-old fat boy running all over the place, I'm going to get you looking as good as I can. So she went down and bought me a fancy running outfit, and I'd already gotten some fancy shoes. Oh, and I did something that was really ugly. But I hadn't read Ann Landers at the time, and I'm going to use that as my excuse, although I really knew better. You know, Ann says that you should not steal pages out of other folks' magazines. Well, there was a page in one of the doctor's magazines advertising jockey shorts. Now, I don't know if you folks in Minneapolis read the jockey short ads or not. But if you don't, the next time you see one, you should at least look at the picture. You'll find out in a hurry, they don't put jockey shorts on fat boys. At least they don't have a Goodyear. So I hung it up in my bathroom and I said, now there's my hero. That's the way I'm going to look. Well, the next morning that alarm clock sounded off and I hopped out of bed and put that fancy running outfit on and hit the front door and ran a block. Oh, but the next day I did lots better. I ran a block and a mailbox. Then the next day it was a block and 2 mailboxes, then a block and 3, and a block and 4, and a block and 5. One day I ran all the way around the block, came back in, woke the whole family up and said, guess what Dad has done? And one day then I ran a half a mile. Then one day I ran a mile. One day I ran a mile and a half. One day I ran 2 miles. Started doing the sit-ups, only 8 the first day, then 10, then 20, then 40, then 80, then 120, then 200. Started doing push-ups, only 6 the first day. Then 8, then 10, then 20, then 30, then 40. The day I do the GI push-up, that just means you push up in the air and slap your hands while you're in the air. I'll tell you, it's different from the others. And that weight started coming down from 202 to 165. The waistline dropped from 41 to 34. Oh, I know a lot of people have said to me, yeah, but I bet you were dieting religiously, which is partially true because I did quit eating in church. Now, please understand, I am not here to try to talk you onto going on a diet. I'm here to talk to you about goals. As a matter of fact, I talk about it as much as I do because it involves every single principle of goal setting. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, my credibility was at stake. You see, if I'm going to write in my book, you can be like you want to be. If I'm going to stand up in front of you and say, you can be like you want to be, and I come waddling out at 2:02, there goes credibility. If I get up here and acknowledge Jesus Christ one moment and tell you a dirty joke the next, there is no credibility. See, credibility is a tremendously important thing. That was first.